Hey guys, it's Bill from Linden, Tennessee. There's some fan noise. It's 94 degrees in the garage. I find it something that helps a lot is if you don't drink a lot of fluids, you stop sweating eventually, and that makes things a whole lot easier. It doesn't get in your eyes, it doesn't sweat all over everywhere. Yeah, it's really great when you stop sweating. I kid. Drink lots of fluids. Of course, take breaks. Do as I say, not as I do. Look, you can see I've got this engine transmission almost out. Holy smokes. I bet when this thing was made in 1980, they had a process and they had the right fixtures and everything was all set up, and it didn't take but a second to put this in here. But this has been a 2.5 hour ordeal. This damn thing has 4 engine mounts. It's got this one here, it's got one that's in the back, it's got the one here in the front, and it's got one in the back of the transmission. It's like, what? So on the side of the transmission, yeah, it's got 4 engine mounts just for, geez, a 50 horsepower engine. I mean, a blown Chevy has 2 and 1 transmission. Anyway, I digress. But I got the hard part done, and it really has been a pain in the ass. I do have to admit, though, this is actually the very first front-wheel drive engine that I've ever pulled. So I probably did some dumb things. Who knows? But this is definitely the part of an EV conversion that I just hate the worst. Getting all this nasty, stanky, drippy, oily stuff out of here. But now that it is, I'll get this thing out. I'll get this engine off the transmission. Then I will attempt to put the transmission back in. It should be a whole lot easier without an engine hanging off it. And then I can measure up and see if my motor is going to fit. But yeah, all right then. We will see you in a minute. Well, all right, we got this thing out of here. That was a pain in the ass. All right, well, it's done now. I gotta say, Volkswagen, you're weird. You're just backwards. Like, they went and looked at, like, how's everybody else doing clutches? Let's do it completely backwards. This is the strangest thing. Oh, yeah, by the way, we are, without the flywheel or whatever, we're at 272 pounds. This weird flywheel thing weighs another 30 pounds probably. So we're almost 300 pounds. We're at 374 pounds transmission and engine. So this is one heavy little lump. And the electric motor I'm looking to replace it with is 160 pounds or 130 or something. And if it doesn't fit, the one that I'm actually going to replace it with is more like 80 pounds. So we're going to have a significant weight reduction in the front. And the batteries are going to be anywhere from 300 to 350 pounds. So, I mean, the batteries are going to weigh basically what this engine weighed, and they're going to be in the back. There's not going to be a fuel tank anymore, which, by the way, I had just filled up that fuel tank, and man, is that a 15-gallon tank? It's close to it. I probably pulled 12 gallons out of that damn thing. Whew. Yeah, so that won't be back there anymore. So there's going to be 300 to 350 pounds of batteries in the back. Anywhere from an 80-pound up to a 160-pound motor in the front. So overall weight of this thing is going to be right at the same. So there you go. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, I got this. This is the weirdest thing. This this clutch pressure plate situation. Of course, there's your actual pressure plate, and that fits roughly like that. And then this big old lump goes on that, and then a rod going through the center of the transmission input shaft. That's what actuates the pressure plate, which is on the back. Now, normally all this stuff's in the front, and you got a throwout bearing, but there's no throwout bearing on this. It just rides on a hardened shaft that pokes right there. And anyway, it's weird. It's really weird. I don't even know how to get that off. But it's just as well. I don't really care to take it off. The only part that I need is that. And question I have for any of y'all, anybody want this? It's got a rebuilt cylinder head, new injectors. It runs good. A couple of the cylinder walls are scored, but it still has, enough power to, go 55, 60 miles an hour. It ran fine. The only problem that I had was that I kept getting air in the fuel lines because the fuel tank was full of rust and crap, and it was filling up the fuel line. So, I mean, I got about $1,200 and $1,500 into this thing, but if anybody wants this, I'd take $500 for it. It's got to be good to somebody for something. The starter is good. The alternator works good. It's got an air compressor, AC compressor on it, but you know that doesn't work. But it's got the bracket for all that stuff. There's also the fuel tank, the fuel tank with the rust on the inside. But if someone were to take that to a professional radiator shop or a shop that can do that stuff and clean it out good and put a liner on the inside of it, it'd be great. The outside of it looks fine. It's all galvanized. It's a good tank. But if anybody wants this, just let me know. All right. All right, here we are back. Got some little bit of progress. Through the magic of editing, several hours have elapsed, and now I've got this transmission sort of sitting in here on its rear mount and side mount. And these two little mock-ups represent 2 Tesla modules. And it's kind of cool because there's plenty of room. I got lots of room above them. So if I ended up going this route, then I could even make a little frunk. I could make like a little fiberglass frunk. That'd be kind of cool, especially with this, because you don't have to pull a lever on the inside of the car to get in here. So if you bought some groceries or something, you could just come on out here and pull on that little dude right there and open your frunk. That'd be kind of cool. Maybe I can do that. Anyway, it's been so hot today. It was really hot. I was sweating a lot. But we're getting towards the end of the day now, and it's a little bit better. It's still hot. Anyway, you don't care about my problems. If you're watching this, you care about this Volkswagen. And my problem currently, let me extend my tape measure, is that from that frame rail, I guess you'd call a frame rail crumple zone, whatever, to the transmission is 18¼ inches. Now, if I go from the motor mount, same thing, it's about 16¾ inches, which, sort of works out because those motor mounts are about 2 inches long. Now, if we come over here to this scale motor, we find that from the back of it, on there, to right there is 16¼ So there is actually plenty of room if I cut those motor mounts out. I don't know why I'm a little bit hesitant to cut the motor mounts out. Well, the problem is every single conversion I do it so that if the conversion itself doesn't work, then it's just ruined. Like it's the car is ruined. And if I keep those motor mounts in there, then there's at least a potential that someone could, I don't know. It's dumb. I'll just go ahead and cut the motor mounts out because that motor being heavier, I think it's 130 pounds maybe. I don't remember what it is, but it's 100 and something. And the engine was 200 and, what did I say? I don't know, 200 and something. So I'm going to be 100 pounds light up here. But if I put these 2 Tesla modules up here, those are 50 pounds each. So that gets me back to where I was. So I put that motor, which will have way more than enough torque. In fact, I can, enough horsepower, I can just basically lock this transmission into second gear and get rid of my shifter inside and get rid of the clutch and all. I'm not going to have a clutch anyway, but get rid of all that stuff. And yeah, I'll never have to shift, and it'll be pretty sporty. That motor was fairly sporty in second gear in my Ranger, and it weighed about, I don't know, 3,500 pounds. And this is going to weigh right at, 2,000. I think these were only 1,800 pounds from the factory. I may be wrong. Someone will correct me. But it's not going to weigh very much. It's going to be considerably less than the Ranger was. At least 1,000 pounds less than the Ranger was. So that's kind of cool. So I can go ahead and, you see I've got let's pull that out of there. Let's talk about this, how we're going to do this. Maybe I can. Yeah, I can. Okay. Yeah, so there's my pressure plate. And the way this is going to work, let me get another visual aid. Yeah, the way this is going to work is, this was the coupler for my Ranger. And that right there is the spline for the input shaft of the Ranger. And all that spline is that part right there. You just go into this pressure, you go into this friction disc with a hacksaw, and you get that middle part out. And then you turn it down on the lathe, and then you make a coupling spline coupling there. It's a 1 1/8 inch shaft, not splined, keyed coupling, 1 1/8 inch shaft, and you weld that part to that part, and there it is. So that's kind of awesome, and that's fairly easy. There's a number called the magic number, which is the distance from. Let's do this. So it's the distance from the input shaft here to the output shaft of the motor. So obviously you don't want these two to touch. That little nub right there, that's the push rod for the clutch. So that's not gonna be there anyway. I might need to keep it there. I don't know if oil will come out of there if I don't have it there. But anyway, so there's a magic number. You got to have that coupler the right length, and then there's going to be some sort of a plate that the motor will bolt to, and then that plate will bolt to the bell housing of the transmission here. And it's probably going to be 1/2 inch aluminum. And to pick up the holes where that is, and you know, I'll show you this when I get to it, but you basically put your piece of aluminum flat on a table, and you pick up this transmission and you set it flat on the piece of aluminum, and then you just transfer punch the holes where they are. And in this case, I've got the 2 there on the top. I've got normally those 2 right there on the side would be for the starter. Use those there. And then there's 1 down in the bottom. So it's anywhere from, you know, it's like 5 holes to transfer. And that holds the aluminum plate to the bell housing, and then there'll be, it's called a C-face. It's a C-face mounting, and this has several different mounting options. But there's, you know, these 2 here, and then there's different positions that you can clock it in, and you typically use just 4 of them. In fact, I got another visual I can show you. This was a bought piece that I used for the Ranger. So these holes here, obviously that's where the starter was, and then that's the sort of the top of the engine, and these are the 4 bolt holes for that motor. And then this is kind of precision-ish, so that centers on the motor. You do the 4 bolt holes, and it goes straight through. Now, I've never made an adapter plate, but I'm not too worried about doing it. The biggest deal is just getting everything centered and squared. Since a lot of, like back in the day, you could use what's called a Lovejoy connection. And it's basically just like three little tabs on this side and 3 tabs on that side. And it's got like a little rubber elastomer or shock absorption unit in the middle. But they wear out. They will definitely wear out. And if they do wear out, you got to take the whole thing apart to get to it. So I'm just going to do a solid coupler like what I just showed you. But you got to be sure to get everything straight and square and all that. So what's going to end up happening, what I'll probably do instead of using an aluminum plate is I may use an aluminum plate to bolt to the motor. So I'll use an aluminum plate to bolt to the motor, and then I'll have I'm not really sure, and then I'll maybe make like standoffs or something to come off of the transmission, like precision length standoffs that'll come off the transmission. And then when everything is, that will make sure that it's parallel. And then all I have to do is make sure that the coupler is lined up between the motor and the input shaft of the transmission. I'm talking out loud right now, so you're coming along on the journey. Anyway, that's how I'm going to do it. But typically with these things, I don't actually know how I'm going to do it until I actually do it. So that's where we went. That's what we did today. So I'm going to go jump in the river because I'm still hot and sweaty and gross. So I appreciate you watching, and we will see you next time. Okay, we're not done yet. I was going to go in the river, still going to go in the river, but I'm really impatient, so I wanted to get this thing apart. So if you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 rivets. Likewise on that side, there was 4 holes right there. You just grind the heads off those rivets, whack it off with a chisel, and you end up with a whole bunch of parts. You end up with a little rubber thingy and a little wave washer, some things, 4 springs, and this part. This is where it's at. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut this little spider thing off here. I'm not going to mess with that machine surface. We're going to keep that there, at least initially. And then, because that's probably going to, I'll probably turn my coupler, I'll turn down and it'll have an inside diameter of that right there. So that'll fit in there nice and tight. And then that flange right there, the shiny, will just sit right on that coupler. And then on the other half of that, that's where the keyed 1 1/8 inch bore will be that goes on the motor output shaft. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I'm just gonna cut that off and just have that. I may put it in the lathe and see if I can turn that down. This may be really hard, I don't know. But okay, now we are really done. Thanks for watching.